Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us at today's webinar, talking about the GDPR app. So just a few housekeeping tips to begin with. You are all on mute, so we won't be able to hear any noises in the background. There is a question box available for you, so if you have any questions throughout the session, do pop your question in there and we'll do our best to answer as many of them as we can at the end of the session. I'll also be running a poll partway through the session just to see what your expectations are and how much you understand of GDPR at the moment. At the end, we'll have a survey for you, and I'd really appreciate it if you could take the time to complete it, as it will help us for future webinars and understanding your expectations and what you've learned today at the GDPR session. We'll also be sending you an email with a link to the webinar afterwards. So your speakers today are myself, Danusha Jolliffe, the Marketing Manager, and Andrea Concato, our Development Manager, who's been with us since July. He made an impact immediately on the business with his 12 years of NAV experience.
Hello, everyone.
So in terms of objectives for today, we're going to be talking about how GDPR stands to affect your business, the Microsoft approach to GDPR. Andrea will then give you a demo of the GDPR app that has been developed here in the office. And then finally, we'll end with some feedback and a Q&A session where we'd love to answer your questions. I'd just like to say at this point that we're not GDPR advisors, but we know what we can do to help you to achieve compliance by using NAV in the best way. So, this is just a quick summary slide that Microsoft have been using, talking about the clarification and the consistency of data for individuals. There are 4 pillars here that are of real importance that I guess everyone's already started thinking about. So it's talking about enhanced personal privacy rights, making sure that the data you are looking after is actually looked after properly and that you are taking as much care of it as you possibly can. It's also talking about the duty for protection and the mandatory breach reporting. So the ICO will be expecting any breaches of data to be reported within at least 72 hours. And the last point there about significant penalties for non-compliance. It will be very expensive if you aren't compliant, with up to 4% of global turnover being a fine with up to 4% of global turnover potentially being the fine. Now, at this point, I would like to ask you, just to fill in the poll, we've got a question here. So I'll just leave that there for a few minutes and then ask you to complete it. Thank you. That's great. So as you can see, Microsoft takes it really importantly to make sure that your personal identifiable information is looked after, and one of their tools is the Compliance Manager. And we can tell you a little bit more about that later on. So we've had a number of questions from our clients, both before the NAV Summit and at the NAV Summit, of how to get started. And these are just 4 steps that could be useful to you in understanding your responsibilities and ways and means of making sure you become compliant by May the 25th next year. So it's important to discover what personal data you have and where it sits. Is it on paper? Is it in a filing cabinet? Is it held on numerous databases? Are you holding it across emails? And how are you managing that data? Does it get shifted from department to department? Who's looking after it? It's very important, the third point here, about protection and making sure there are security controls. And that's something that Andrea will be looking at when he discusses the GDPR app. Finally, it's important about reporting. How do you keep that documentation? How can you manage it? And if there are any breaches, how do you report it? So if you Google GDPR, the number of people who say they are experts, the number of courses, the number of conferences, there are so many of them, and it can be distilled down into a number of activities that you can either already be doing or be looking at going forwards. So for example, creating a compliance plan, reviewing the contracts you have with your vendors. Are they looking after their GDPR responsibilities as well? But from a TVision point of view, it's the technology investment that we can help you with, looking after your investment in NAV. So here's just a quick graphic on how Microsoft can help you prepare for GDPR. All these different ways, all these different sets of information, it's all there available to help you. We can make sure that you're using NAV in a way to ensure best practice for your compliance. And we can also support you with a GDPR gap analysis with one of our clients that spoke at the recent NAV Summit. I'm now going to pass over to Andrea, who will be giving you the demo of the GDPR app that's been worked on here at TVision.
Okay, thank you, Danisha. Hello, everyone. Today, I'm going to show you how our development is going to treat your sensitive personal data on your NAV solution. I really appreciate every feedback and idea that can improve our app. So, first of all, I'm going to introduce you on your NAV GDPR extension. Secondly, I'm going to demonstrate how we can set up and define personal data fields on our app. And next, I will show you how we can assign permission and specific data fields. And finally, we can have a look at our tracing system and a brief overview of the general setup and batch function. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to show you how the app has been integrated on NAV. We can start, for example, with the contact list. As you can see, the only customization has been this button. So it's personal data button. If I hit this button, I can simply read the personal data information. And this button has been added also on the card, and we can add this button on every page and table of NAV. We also integrate the functionality with a standard app, such as the dial-up Skype in this scenario, or if the type of the field is an email, we are going to up the default account application email. Again, for the URL, we can interact with the browser. I prepare some data also for the employee. That for me is the best sample of personal sensitive data. And now I'm going to show you how we can add a new field for personal data, such as gender, and setting with our database performance personal data definition. So this is the main page where we can define all the field of the personal data field. We can extend, for example, the employee table, the employee standard table. We need to specify the name of the field. We can also mapping the current personal data field with an existing standard field of NAV, in the scenario gender. Okay, is already done. So if now I'm going to open my employee card and personal data, as you can see, we have the gender field available, but there is no interaction with the system because the type is simply text. So let's now define a lookup code for have the possibility to select from the list our gender. First of all, I need to create a personal data group, like gender 2 in this scenario. And then I need to identify and specify all the elements of this field, of this group. So male and female. Okay. Perfect. Now I can change the type of my field as a lookup. As you can see, there is the date field, the email field, and specify which one is the lookup code. Done. So now we can go on our personal data page on employee net. Okay, and now the button is going to show you the list. We can pick up the gender. In this scenario, probably female is best. Okay. Obviously, this field is available on all the other employees, and so we can select the gender for all the record. We can also sort in the field, the order of the field, and this one is with another field on our data definition table. So we just need to specify a certain number. And in this scenario, I want to move the employee contact name and employee contact page name on the bottom. And again, as you can see now, the two fields are on the bottom of the list. I'm now going to show you how we deal with the permission and with the different role. I prepare two users, the administrator user, TVision 1, and TVision, the basic user. So I open a second session of nav TVision, where basically our basic user, we can simulate our basic user view. As you can see, the basic user have the basic employee rule assigned, and the administrator one have the super rule of the personal data. If I now going to have a look on the employee personal data, as you can see, there is a restricted field show on this page. And this is the full list of the fields available. So I'm going to show you how we can grant this permission for a specific field. So this one is our gender field, and I'm going now to add the rule basic. Now, if I'm going to open again the page of the personal data as a basic user, the gender is present on your list. You can see there is a button view log on the top. This one is not available at that moment. So is a different permission for the application. So in the permission, we have another tick like view log, where basically we can give access to the user or the rule to specific view log. The view log is where we are storing. Oops, I need to change. Probably I didn't set up the. Oh yeah, I need to tick the button and press OK probably. Yeah, now I stick it. So if I come back on the page, personal data page, I can have access to the log. This one is a very important page because basically we can tracing all the reading of the data, the sensible data for the specific field for the specific employee, and we know exactly who, when, and which kinds of operation is doing at the moment. Okay, so next I'm going to show you the general setup. So we have the default retention period. This one is the data formula that explains how many times we need to keep the data, the sensitive data on our system. Then there is the view log, so we can activate the reading, the modify, or the deleting. This one is the best function to move the data from the standard field to the encrypted personal data. And this is another operation that is going to delete the data from the system based on the retention period. Another functionality that is available is to translate the personal data code. So there is a possibility to show in a different way the caption of the data field. Another important functionality on our app is that okay, this one is the field blocked, so we can block field, but we can also delete personal data. So if we're going to look up the personal data, there is a button delete. So this button is going to delete the field selected. So we can easily delete all the data of the contact. So, okay, the demonstration is completed. So we have identified this gap between NAV and the GDPR requirement, and so I show you to you how we can track any kind of operation with sensitive data and personal information by using our tracing system. With a view log, we are able to know how, when, and which information has been read. I've demonstrated how we can grant permission to every field to specific roles. So we can, and finally, I'm going to show you how the personal data is encrypted and anonymized on our SQL database. This is something that for the user is transparent, but is very important for the security of the data. As you can see, there is no possibility to identify sensitive personal data on individual person. So on SQL, all the information are related to a specific key that is a kind of a token, and the value is encrypted with a NAV encryption key. This is the architecture of our app, basically. So as you can see, we restrict all the personal data on the page of the personal data page, and the encryption is made on fly after the request of the user. So all the check and the tracing is through this page, and the encryption is made on fly. So basically on the SQL database, there is no data decoded stored. Okay, my demonstration is now complete. I hope you can give me some feedback and a good idea for improve my app. And I think now Lucia is going to close the webinar.
So this has been a whistle-stop tour through a subject that is highly complex. The GDPR regulations actually have 99 articles within them, and these are the ones that are going live in May next year. So thank you very much for joining us. I think actually now is a good time to start getting prepared. So I'm just going to review the Q&A and see whether any questions have been coming in yet. So far we've had a handful of questions, and I'm happy to go through them. So one of the questions we had was, where can we find the definition of personal identifiable information and how it applies to GDPR? So it provides a definition in Article 4, and I'm just reading this out, saying that personal data means any information relating to an identified or identifiable natural person. So that's someone who can be identified by name, an identification number, location, or online identifier, and that's specific to physical, physiological, genetic, mental, economic, cultural, or social identity. So clearly, using the GDPR app that has been developed here at TVision will hide that information so that not everybody has access to it. And that's the point here. Who should have access to data? Who should be able to modify it? Who should be able to read it and or delete it? So I think Andrea's demoed there ways that we can help with that. I think a couple of questions have come in for Andrea that are more technical.
Yeah. For example, someone is asking me about the compatibility of this app. So at this stage, the app is based on the NAV encryption. So this encryption is available from 2015. So out of the box, it comes with a NAV 2015 or latest. But we are working on to encrypt the data as well for the oldest versions. There's another good question. Yeah, at the moment the question is yeah. If the data is encrypted in a SQL database, will this restrict access to data via PowerPoint and export in Excel? Yes, there is on purpose an isolation of the personal data, and we have only access through the personal page so far. So we are thinking about create a kind of batch export of personal data, but we need to take care about that because all leaking of on the security of this kind of personal data. We need to again tracing the reading. We need to know exactly which data when has been exported from who, and so we are going to improve with a kind of batch export of personal data, and so the people can export a bunch of data, personal data in once.
I've also had a question here about the compliance manager. So one of the Microsoft tools that have been launched fairly recently, which was part of the Microsoft Stack page, is a compliance manager, and I've been asked where you can get some more information about that, and that's on Microsoft website. We'll include it in the follow-up email, but if you wanted to have a look, it's https://aka.ms/compliance manager, but we will send that information out as well. I think there's a few more questions coming in that are more technical for Andrea. Keep them coming in.
So, is there a way to encrypt the customer contact data in NAV, and how we can similar out log of the data review? Yeah, the idea is that we can mapping the data between our new encrypted field and the standard field. It means that our personal data will be the substitute of the actual standard field. There is already some tool that are moving data between the standard field and this personal data field. And so the idea is that if this one is the field is classified as sensitive data, then we need to move this one on our app. If not, we can think about a customization or something like that, but it's not actually a personal data management. Before, I also told you that we can extend with the personal data all the table on NAV. So I know that there is some our customer that are using a lot resource card resource table. So we can extend again the resource table with our button and our management of the personal data. And we can store also password, IP if you need to identify the person that are connecting on your web portal or this kind of things or other information.
I've also had a question here saying if we have customer data submitted by a customer, can we also share that data with somebody else? So yeah, that's a great question, and one that a specific GDPR expert would be able to answer for you. Because GDPR relies specifically on personal data, you need to decide whether that information that you have that you want to share is personal identifiable information. So one of the great resources is the Microsoft GDPR Trust Center. And again, we can send that information out to you after the webinar. Now, I think we've got a few more questions, and I know there's quite a few come in, so I don't know if we'll have time to answer all of them. Andrea, did you have one there about that you could answer?
Yeah. This one is why we cannot turn the SQL encryption on. So this one is a good question. To be honest, it's something that we can do. The point is that the SQL encryption on apps is available only for the Enterprise Edition, and so for the Express and the SIS, the Standard Edition is not available, and also so you need to upgrade the license, and this one could be a lot expensive. And also, if I can, I think at the end of the day, at the SQL level, the data is not encrypted. So if someone can query your SQL, we are not able to trace who is reading, when is reading, which kind of data is reading from SQL. So probably it's something that is different. So you can choose the solution.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. We've only got a couple of minutes left, so the questions that we haven't had time to answer, we will be in touch directly with you. Thank you very much for your attention, and if you did have any other questions on the slides, do email me. My email there is djolliffe, so just address it to me, Danusha. So following the webinar, we'll be sending you a copy of the recording, and we'll also be sharing a short survey at the end of the session. So we would appreciate it if you could complete that, just so that we know what kind of content was useful, how we could deliver further webinars going forward. So once again, everybody, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.